In this video, I'm going to be talking about the upcoming crash. That's right, the upcoming crash that could be the biggest crash in all of world history, at least according to one financial guru. I'm going to tell you what he's actually predicting for this month, what it could actually mean for gold, silver, and Bitcoin, and for XRP. Because as you know, this case seems to be wrapping up. It does not look like it's going in the SEC's favor, but I'm going to tell you one more thing the SEC just did that it looks like they're trying to avoid. There's a big crypto trader right now that is actually saying that Bitcoin is actually tracking what another altcoin has been doing for the past year. He tweeted out the charts and showed what they're doing. I'm going to tell you what it looks like and what that subtle little prediction said might happen to Bitcoin. And so if you look at a few of these things that are all shaping up together, it's going to culminate in something specifically for XRP. And I'm going to tell you about it in this video. Also, Republican Congressman Madison Cawthorn recently tweeted out that he thinks that cryptocurrency should be the new gold standard. Now you're thinking like a libertarian millennial, but it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Hey everyone, my name is Randy and welcome back to the Late Night Grind. And right now on this channel, we are covering the Ripple versus SEC case, as well as other cryptocurrency news, investment markets, and personal finance. So if any of those topics interest you and you want to follow along, make sure you do two things. Number one, hit that subscribe button to the Late Night Grind, and also click the bell notification icon so YouTube will send you a notification when I release a new video. Also, if you're feeling really generous today, and I think you are, if you could do two things for me, I'd greatly appreciate it. Number one, smash the thumbs up button, and number two, watch this video all the way to the end. Those are really the two best things that you can do to support a YouTube channel. So if you do that, I greatly appreciate it. All right, guys, so let's jump into it. So I want to talk about a crypto influencer and crypto trader, also known as Kaleo, who tweeted out a chart of Bitcoin, and it was compared to a chart of another altcoin that right now Bitcoin is actually mimicking in terms of its chart. Now, it's not necessarily the only one, but it's interesting to look at what happened to this altcoin after it went through what Bitcoin has went through so far. Well, what did it do? Well, it basically went parabolic. It's grown over 10,000% over the last year, but basically it's been following the same chart that Bitcoin has followed, but instead of hitting these consolidation points, it took off and reached new all-time highs a couple of weeks ago. Now, this altcoin is Luna. Now, Luna is the native token of the Terra ecosystem, and from what I've seen, a lot of these ecosystem digital assets were really starting to take off at the same time. This is when Solana was hitting new all-time highs, Cardano was hitting new all-time highs, and Luna was hitting all-time highs. But Luna's chart looks remarkably similar to Bitcoin's, but without the parabolic rise. Now, a lot of people are speculating, and Kaleo was also speculating, that this looks awfully similar to a Q4 prediction that Bitcoin is going to climb, hit new all-time highs, and go beyond $100,000 in value. Now, that coincides with Plan B, who is the curator of the stock-to-flow model, putting it to Bitcoin and tweeting out these charts on a regular basis. Well, he recently tweeted out his predictions that he had made back in July. He made predictions for August, September, October, November, and December. So here's what his predictions were, and I'm going to tell you if he hit them or not. For August, his prediction was that Bitcoin would hit 47,000. Keep in mind, Bitcoin was at just above 30-some thousand when he actually made this prediction. He said August would hit 47,000, check. He said September would hit 43,000. Check. His next one is October. He says it will hit 63,000, just under all-time highs. November will be 98,000, and December will be 135,000. That is his prediction based on his stock-to-flow model. There's a lot of black swan events that could affect things like major sell-offs, and there could be a major crash that I'm going to talk about upcoming next. But so far, he's been spot on. And of course, the next debate is whether this is a normal Bitcoin market cycle or whether this is a lengthening market cycle with possible diminishing returns, meaning the market cycle is going to take much, much longer to reach its peak of the market cycle. Might not be December, might be February, March, even April, and that the returns might not be quite as high. It might not be 500,000 like some models predict. It might be 140,000. And of course, it might not happen at all. Or some of that might be due to a catastrophic crash that looks like it could be incoming. That's right, our favorite crash predictor, Robert Kiyosaki, was recently on Kiko News, and in it, Robert Kiyosaki doubles down on what his prediction is, which is a massive worldwide global collapse coming sometime in October, and I'll tell you about these reasons. And he also mentioned what he's planning on doing with gold, silver, Bitcoin, and stocks. Now, his first point was that Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell basically have no idea what they're doing. He made no bones about it that they're basically doing a terrible job. He said their policies and all this money printing that they're doing, what essentially it's doing is just pumping up the asset price of different things like stocks, the real estate market, and some things like that, but not actually entering the economy. And why he's predicting this is because what he looks at is the M2 money supply times the velocity. And he's looking at the fact that the velocity is extremely low. People just are not spending money right now. And he says when you look at that and compare it to the massive amount of debt that the US Treasury is holding, something is going to break. And he's predicting that the collapse of the asset market is what is going to go first, and essentially that will filter down into the rest of the economy. And so what he's saying is that you need to be ready for this. Now, one of the other things he points out is that the debt to GDP ratio is just out of sight right now, which he's absolutely right about all this. This is nothing new. You can actually go up and look at all these numbers on all the charts, and he's absolutely right. And the United States is actually having a debate right now as to what to do with the debt ceiling. And when you're having those kinds of debates, because they're having that debate because the United States could essentially run out of money on October 18th if they don't raise the debt ceiling. Well, if you're having those kinds of conversations, you've already lost. So he's basically saying something's going to give, and it's going to be the asset bubbles. He considers real estate, but he said gold, Bitcoin, silver, stock markets, everything is going to go down. So what he says is plan on having cash available so that you can pick up the pieces when that crash actually happens, because you'll be able to get things for dirt cheap. He talks about how he was able to pick up when gold fell to $300 at the beginning of the early 2000s. He picked it up shortly after. When Bitcoin went up to 20,000 and then fell back down to 3,000, he picked it up shortly thereafter. So of course he was calling for having cash ready to buy gold, Bitcoin, and silver. But he did say you might want to stay away from the stock market. And he had a couple other things to say along with it. In fact, I'm going to link this entire, it was like a 35-minute interview down in the description below. You can go check that out. It was pretty eye-opening. And he also had some pretty harsh words for Janet Yellen and Jerome Powell, basically calling them Marxist. And he quotes a few things from Lenin that talk about turning a capitalistic society into a communist society, and essentially by creating a central bank and having it controlled by the Fed, and that's the fastest way into communizing a nation. And he also points to CBDCs, the Fed coin, which would be the US dollars version of a cryptocurrency, a central bank digital currency. He says that scares him more than anything else in the financial world. A CBDC, a central bank digital currency that'll be able to monitor, track, and control everything that you do. That scares him more than anything. So it was a really, really interesting interview that he was doing. Of course, you have to point out that 4 or 5 times he also talked about the book that he just wrote that he was promoting. So keep that in mind. Keep it in line with a grain of salt, because a lot of things he talks about is correct. Now, a lot of his predictions, well, that remains to be seen, because it will be really interesting what happens if any crash like that happens, how that's going to react with the crypto market, because like I said, there's a lot of people saying Q4 is going to be the rest of this massive bull run, but if there's a massive crash, well, that might throw a monkey wrench into things. Or maybe that's the catalyst for it to actually go parabolic afterwards. Because if we look back to March of 2020, when all the COVID restrictions and lockdowns were first announced, Bitcoin tanked, and then shortly after, skyrocketed. But you're going to want to keep all this in mind, because as we look at the rest of this SEC versus Ripple case and the end of the case coming soon, hopefully within the next 1, 2, maybe 3 months, you're going to want to be ready, because a lot of people are now starting to talk about XRP, not just in the mainstream media, but now we have, like my video that I published yesterday, many people are talking about how XRP, the XRP ledger, is going to be taking on Ethereum. And if you watch my previous video, which I will link in the cards up above, basically talk about how Ripple just announced federated sidechains in which they can launch essentially a virtual Ethereum machine to run Ethereum smart contracts on the XRP ledger, which will allow them to run DeFi applications. That's huge. So when you talk about that, you talk about the case of the SEC ending, along with Bitcoin going on its parabolic run. Yeah, that's why some people are saying 30x is 100% absolutely in the cards, if all those things were to come to fruition. And just a quick update with what's going on in that case. The SEC actually wrote a letter to Judge Netburn asking for the SEC to essentially get out of having to respond to over 29,000 different questions, which, as Attorney Jeremy Hogan pointed out, those questions are basically yes or no questions, and they are essentially locked in when you go to trial as your answers, so that there isn't any more deliberation, and they can be discussed in trial as your answers. So nonetheless, the SEC says, well, listen, this might take us a couple of months just to get the answers. So in my opinion, this might be a little bit of a jab, since this is essentially what the SEC asked Ripple to do a couple of months ago when they asked Ripple to turn over 1 million pieces of Slack documentation. I know that seems like an eternity ago. The answers to these questions Ripple actually asked for back on August 31st. Now, it just seems like the SEC is one of those people that waits until the last second to do their homework. Now they have to ask the teacher, or in this case the judge, for some leniency. So we're going to see what happens. So they've actually asked for a telephonic conference to discuss that. Details will be coming out soon. So these are just a few of the things going on. So if you want to follow along with all these storylines and all these topics, make sure you're subscribed to the Late Night Grind. Don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. And as always, I'll see you guys on the next video.